Hello everyone, and welcome back to Hack and Craft. Do you recognize this knife right here? That's right, it made its first appearance all the way back in my very first video. Now, after quite some time of regular use, this blade has gotten noticeably dull. It's not as sharp as it used to be, and I think many of us can relate to that, right? That really shows you just how blunt it has become, doesn't it? With a dull knife like this, sharpening is definitely the best solution. But let's be honest, sharpening a blade by hand can take a lot of time, and not everyone knows how to do it properly. It's easy to get frustrated, especially if the results aren't as sharp as you hope for. So today, I'm going to show you a simple tool that can really help us out when it comes to sharpening knives. It's a handy little device that makes the whole process easier, quicker, and much more effective, especially for those of us who don't sharpen blades very often. Let's get started. Here, I prepared a wooden board. It doesn't need to be too big or too thick. Just make sure it's in a rectangular shape, alright? Alongside that, I have an L-shaped right angle bracket. This little tool is very helpful, especially when we need to ensure proper alignment and stability during our project. I'm going to place the L-shaped right angle bracket right here on the wooden board. Once it's properly aligned, I'll go ahead and mark these 2 points where we'll later insert the screws. It's a small step, but it really helps everything come together neatly. Next, I'm going to drill 2 small holes right at the spots I've just marked. These holes will make it easier to attach the bracket securely later on. Remember, just drill gently and don't go too deep. We only need enough space for the screws to grip properly. Alright, I'll place the L bracket right back where it was earlier. Make sure the holes on the bracket line up perfectly with the ones we just drilled into the wood. This step is important to ensure everything stays straight and sturdy later on. I'm going to use screws to firmly secure this L bracket in place now. But screwing directly into a flat piece of wood can be quite tricky and tough, especially without a guide. That's exactly why I pre-drilled those small holes earlier, to make it much easier to screw the screws in smoothly and straight. These pilot holes help prevent the wood from splitting and ensure the screws go in perfectly. All done. Now the L bracket is firmly secured and won't move around. Let's move on to the next step. At the other end of the wooden board, I'll take a ruler to measure and mark 2 points carefully. Measuring precisely is important here to make sure everything lines up correctly later on. Once I've marked those spots, we'll be ready for the next part. And that's it. These are the 2 spots I've carefully chosen. Now, I'm going to drill 2 small holes right at these points. All done. Now, I'm going to place a small metal washer into each of the holes I just drilled. Next, I'll use a screwdriver along with screws to firmly secure these 2 metal washers in place. This step ensures that the washers don't move or loosen over time, giving our setup extra stability and durability. It's a small detail, but very important to make sure everything holds together well. Let me carefully tighten the screws now. But don't screw the screws all the way in just yet. Leave a little gap, just like I'm doing here. This small space is important for what we'll do next, so be sure to leave it like that. Next, I'll move on preparing the sharpening stone. I'm going to secure the sharpening stone in a vertical position. On the top surface of the sharpening stone, I will use a marker to mark the exact center point. Once I've made the mark, I'll carefully drill a small hole right at that spot. I'll add a little bit of water. Alright, Now I'm going to switch to a larger drill bit. This bigger bit will help us create a wider hole, which is exactly what we need for the next step. Let's add a bit more water again before continuing to drill. All done. Now I'm going to wipe around the drilled hole to remove the excess moisture. The water helps keep things cool and reduces friction, making the drilling smoother and preventing the stone from cracking. After giving it a quick wipe, I'm going to use a hair dryer to completely dry the sharpening stone. We want to make sure there's absolutely no moisture left inside the hole or on the surface. I've got a small metal rod here. This will act as our support pin. I'm going to insert it carefully into the hole we just drilled into the sharpening stone. I'm going to fill that hole with some baking soda. Just pack it in until the hole is completely filled. Once that's done, I'll drip a generous amount of super glue directly onto the baking soda. This combination creates a quick setting, rock-hard bond that will firmly secure the metal rod inside the sharpening stone. It's a great little trick, perfect for when you need something to hold fast and stay strong. Now, I'll take one end of the metal rod and carefully insert it into the hole on top of the right angle bracket. Now I'm going to use an angle measuring app to check the tilt of the sharpening stone. We're aiming for an angle of about 17 degrees. This tilt will help us sharpen the blade more efficiently and with better control. Now it's time to place the blade into our sharpening setup and give it a test. Let's carefully slide the knife blade underneath the two small metal loops we installed earlier. These loops will help guide the blade and keep it at a consistent angle while sharpening. Very helpful, especially for those of us who don't sharpen knives often. To make sure the blade stays perfectly level during sharpening, I'm going to attach a small piece of plastic just opposite the knife blade, right under the metal loop. Now, I'm going to take a screwdriver and tighten down these two screws to firmly secure the knife in place. This step is really important, especially when working with older or dull blades. A stable knife means safer, more even sharpening. And that's exactly what we want, right? Alright, that's perfect. Now, I'm going to spray some water to moisten the sharpening stone. This helps keep the stone cool and prevents overheating while we sharpen the knife. Once it's wet enough, we can start sharpening the blade. Let's get to it. After sharpening one side for a while, we'll switch to the other side of the sharpening stone. The two surfaces of the sharpening stone have different levels of roughness, each designed for a specific stage of sharpening. Remember, it's very important to keep the stone wet throughout the process to ensure smooth sharpening and to protect both the blade and the stone. Now, I'm going to move on to sharpening the other side of the blade. It's important that we sharpen both sides to keep the edge balanced and sharp. This way, the blade will cut smoothly and safely when you use it. So, let's take our time and make sure we cover both sides evenly. And don't forget, always wet the sharpening stone before you start grinding the blade. Keeping the stone moist helps reduce friction and prevents the blade from overheating, which protects both your tool and the stone. So, a little water goes a long way to make the sharpening process smoother and safer. So, I've finished sharpening the blade now. At this final step, do you notice that the way we sharpen the knife is a bit different from how we started? That's because during sharpening, it's hard to make sure every part of the blade is ground evenly. So this last step is very important. It helps to even out the edges and make sure the knife is sharp all along its length. This way, you get a blade that's consistently sharp and ready for any cutting task. Now I'm going to test the knife by slicing through this piece of paper. Let's see if all that sharpening really paid off, shall we? Wherever I move the blade, the paper just cuts cleanly and effortlessly. It feels like slicing through air. Pretty impressive, isn't it? Let me know in the comments. Have you ever sharpened a knife this way before? Or maybe you've got your own favorite sharpening tricks. I'd love to hear your stories. Now, let's move on to this piece of rope right here. I'm going to place it down on this wooden board, and let's give a nice clean cut. Just look at that. One swipe, and it's cut clean. Isn't that satisfying to watch? Take a look at those cut lines, folks. You can actually see how sharp the knife is just by looking at them, can't you? And finally, let's move on to this cardboard box right here. I'm going to get a few cuts and see how the knife handles it. Wow, look at that. So smooth and effortless. The blade just glides through the cardboard like it's nothing. So we just crafted our very own knife sharpening tool. One that's sharp, efficient, and ready to bring any dull blade back to life. Here at Hack and Craft, we believe that with just a bit of creativity, you can make some truly amazing tools right at home. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you won't miss out on any of our upcoming tips and tricks. Thanks so much for watching.